There is a significant divide between humans and other wildlife. As humans, we've steadily contributed to the widening gap by thinking of ourselves as superior to other species. We consider ourselves to be of a higher caliber than dogs, which is why we call ourselves as dog owners. We consider ourselves to be more advanced than elephants, and it brings us great joy to be able to teach them skills in the style of a circus. And even when it comes to gorillas, we consider ourselves to be on a higher level than them, which leads to us killing them at our own whims. We ruin their habitats, and then we take pride in the fact that we are working to preserve the life of some species. It's not that I'm against conservation efforts. I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying is that we wouldn't have to deal with conservation issues in the first place if we recognize them as creatures on the same level as us, neither lower nor higher. The primary justification for why we hold ourselves to be more advanced than they are is the fact that we have skepticism regarding their capacity to feel, think, comprehend, and remember. We have serious reservations about their IQ. We have the impression that they're not capable of, or at least less capable of, emotions such as hurt, suffering, nostalgia, happiness, grief, enthusiasm, and so on and so forth. Gorillas are one of the most endangered species, despite the fact that they're one of the animal kingdom's closest relatives to humans. They're only found in small groups in Africa, and greatly rely on the efforts of conservationists to ensure their continued existence. Kwibi grew up in Damian's Conservation Park, which was located in England and was called Howlett's Wild Animal Park. After he turned 5, he was let loose in the jungles of Gabon, which is located in West Africa. He was a part of a program that releases rehabilitated gorillas back into the wild in an effort to save the species of gorillas, which is already in danger of extinction. After another 5 years, everyone assumed that Kwibi had passed away. Damian made his way back to Gabon in order to look for him there. Will he track him down? And will Kwibi recognize him? When Kwibi sees Damian, how will he react? Will he be angry or confused? Stick around to find out. The Aspinall Foundation is an organization that plays a significant part in the conservation efforts made for gorillas around the world. The gorillas are taken from the Howlett's Wild Animal Park in England, which is where they are reared, and transported to their enormous reserve in Africa. This is part of their work to assist in the process of reintroducing captive gorillas back into their native habitats. The individual in charge of the organization, Damian Aspinall, has witnessed the release of more than 100 gorillas into the wild. Yet there is one particular gorilla that has always remained in his heart. For those of you who are not familiar with Damian Aspinall, he is a philanthropist who's worth many millions of dollars and has a passion for the preservation of wildlife, particularly gorillas. Before establishing what would later become known as the Aspinall Foundation, Mr. Aspinall was already keeping gorillas in his own backyard. The idea is that the gentleman has frequently made news with his philanthropic work for not only his own animal rescue establishment, but also numerous groups all around the world. Well, it isn't quite a backyard because of the whole house thing, but the point is that the person has regularly made headlines. Since he was a young man, Damian has been responsible for the rescue of over 100 gorillas. Nonetheless, there are only a few stories that truly stand out. As a matter of fact, Damian Aspinall says that there is a particular gorilla in his heart that will forever have a spot that's all its own. He was a gorilla by the name of Kwibi, and he had grown to be rather large since being rescued and essentially brought up at the Howlett's Wild Animal Park. During Kwibi's stay with the Howletts, he participated in several activities that allowed him to interact with Damian, his wife, and other members of the Howlett's family. Kwibi the gorilla eventually acquired an affection for Damian and other human companions who would treat this gorilla as if it were a member of their own family. Kwibi and Damian were quite close during the time that the gorilla spent at Howlett's. Damian's foundation is responsible for something else in addition to looking after Kwibi. Once the gorillas have reached an age where they are completely developed and capable of taking care of themselves in the wild, they're released back into their natural habitat. While Damian was staying at Howlett's, he and Kwibi became good friends. On the other hand, the realization that Kwibi would eventually have to be returned to the wild struck a chord of sadness deep within Damian's heart. It was quite possible that the guy and the gorilla would never be able to see each other after what happened. Damian made the decision to follow up with Kwibi shortly after he was allowed to go free. When he asked his African acquaintances in the area, they reportedly told him that the gorilla had developed an aggressive demeanor and that it was difficult to get close to him. He decided to ask the gorilla himself. But once Kwibi was returned to the wild, it was highly unlikely that the gorilla and the human that he considered to be his favorite would ever see each other again. Damian had a strong desire to check on his friend, but he was warned against doing so because of Kwibi's allegedly hostile tendency toward other humans who had attempted to get close to him. Damian's desire to check on his friend was still strong. Would Kwibi have any recollection of his long-lost friend? In spite of the council, Damian Aspinall made the decision to visit Kwibi, and he did so after a gap of 5 years. In spite of the overwhelming odds, he packed his luggage and headed back into the jungle to the location where the gorilla had been freed. You can have a look at the thought-provoking pictures from the internet for yourself. The expression that can be seen in Kwibi's eyes, particularly in some of the photographs, is pretty astounding. It's almost as if he mistook Damian for a newcomer at first, but then he realized it was an old buddy of his all along. Soon after, the gorilla's facial expressions and feelings changed from being angry to being more similar to those of a baby or a dog who's overjoyed to see his owner. This demonstrates without a reasonable doubt that gorillas are not merely animals. Damian is open about the fact that he holds the belief that gorillas possess a higher level of intelligence and empathy compared to other animals. There's something about the dynamic between Damian and Kwibi. The sight of Kwibi's eyes is really gut-wrenching. I don't understand how anyone could ever believe that these beings are simply animals. Gorillas have repeatedly demonstrated that they have extremely high levels of intelligence as well as empathy. Damian knows he can't keep these gorillas under his control indefinitely. When the time comes, the animals must be released back into the wild because the jungle is their natural habitat and they've outlived their usefulness in captivity. However, there's always a greater risk that threatens the gorillas' lives in the wild. Gorillas are particularly vulnerable to humans. It was unclear to Damian whether or not Kwibi would make it out alive. The mortality rate is typically rather high because these gorillas have been nurtured in an artificial sanctuary their whole lives, and as a result, they often lack the natural ability to learn how to survive in the wild. After asking the locals about Kwibi, Damian received several reports regarding the situation. Kwibi made it through the ordeal, grew into a large mature gorilla, and established his own territory. Not only was he a lot older and stronger than the last time Damian saw him, but he also had the capability of attacking Damian if he thought that he was in danger. It was about time that he spoke with Kwibi once more. Despite this, Damian talked the idea over with his family, and they settled on the consensus that they should go to Kwibi one last time. After such a long period of time, Damian was skeptical and ultimately sure that the animal would not know who he was. The whole family get-together wasn't a walk in the park by any means. In addition to what was intended to be a reunion, Damian and his crew had to spend a significant amount of time searching the dense jungle for Kwibi. It was not a simple task at all. The group made multiple trips up and down a river in the forest, during which Damian would send out a distinctive sound that he had used with Kwibi when the latter was still at Howlett's. Damian came so close to quitting in the middle of the game. After some time had passed, namely right before Damian was ready to leave, Kwibi materialized out of nowhere at the bank to meet Damian. It's reasonable to assume that he heard the call and made the decision to visit Damian himself. Damian inched his way toward Kwibi and eventually sat down next to him for a time. After some time, he used his tongue to give him some leaves to eat. These intimate moments between a human and a primate were photographed so that they may be shared with the rest of the world. Kwibi was unwilling to give up his hold. When it was time to make the journey back, Kwibi clung to Damian for support in a manner similar to a piggyback ride. It wasn't until Kwibi started to feel hungry that Damian noticed a window of opportunity and started to sneak away. At the campsite, Damian was in for a pleasantly unexpected experience. Kwibi managed to catch up with Damian and go back along the shoreline with him. He stayed there all night on the opposite bank of the river in order to catch up with Damian. The crew was taken aback when they woke in the morning and saw Kwibi waiting anxiously on the other side of the river for Damian to arrive. Kwibi was standing there when they had last seen him. When Damian floated across the river to the opposite side and embraced the gorilla once more, it was another emotionally charged moment. Who could have predicted that their meeting would be so moving? The tale of Kwibi comes to an encouraging conclusion. It really should come as no surprise that the gorilla's attachment to his previous carer is unaffected by any restrictions whatsoever. Damian found it difficult to say goodbye to Kwibi, but he was confident that the gorilla would continue to shower him with the same amount of love and care whenever the two of them crossed paths again in the future. And what a beautiful story of friendship. Thanks so much for watching. If you love the story of Damian and Kwibi, make sure to give this video a thumbs up. And if you have a story to share with us about your animal friend, leave it in the comment section below. Please subscribe to our channel and ring that bell to be notified the moment another video is ready for you to enjoy. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.